Hello, good morning. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
Well, it's a beautiful Monday morning here in Lagos. You're welcome. I'm Kayode Okikelu.
Yes, indeed. Rise against the odds and make this week count. I'm Bukola Samuel Wemimo. Welcome to Sunrise Daily on Channels Television.
I hope the power grid will let you do that.
The power grid, right? You know, how many times has the power grid collapsed just in space of few months? I can't count anymore. And for some people, they think, well, it really doesn't change anything anyway. There's epileptic power supply any case, so whether it collapses or not, it's the same thing. But for some others who've had maybe better power supply, it might have affected you a bit, especially in the past, 2 to 3 days, really. But hearing that this has collapsed yet again, don't forget the Minister of Power saying that, well, we're working so that this will not happen again. So what exactly is wrong with the power sector?
Well, somebody needs to be telling the nation the truth.
Yeah.
You know, so if they're not used to that, they have to, because this kind of scenarios always show their hands. But at the end of the day, you just wonder. Well, a good thing, I reckon, that electioneering process has started. So there'll be many questions to ask of these chaps, these politicians who say they are dying to serve you all out there. So who knows? We'll see how that turns out. But this morning we've got Mr. Richard Mama. He is the editor-in-chief and publisher of The Difference. He used to be the editor of Business Hallmark. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning.
Well, we'll take a look at some of the dailies and see what they highlight. We'll start with Daily Times. They are focusing on democracy. Yesterday, the president gave his Democracy Day speech, and wow, the shortest, what a speech it was. I mean, people went in to get a cup of coffee, trying to get themselves set, taking their time, and they thought it was going to be a marathon, and before you know what's happening, bam, it's all over, and they're like, whoa, did I just miss that? Well, that's how it is. And it happened to be the president's very last Democracy Day speech. So very interesting. We'll get to hear people's perspective later. But look at the Daily Times this morning. Democracy Day. Buhari vows to ensure transparent presidential election transition. Says citizens' right to choose leaders will be preserved, protected. Reiterates commitment to protecting Nigerians from enemies. The power grid is becoming our enemy now, so we hope that something can be done. I live daily with grief, worry for all victims, prisoners of terrorists. What say you on this?
I think two things jump at me from that. The first is that the president has done the Democracy Day address as has become the custom now. So we have that to deal with. Successive presidents hopefully would continue with the tradition. And the fact that he made promises, that's in terms of the content of the speech, he made promises ensuring transparent, credible elections, ensuring security, and trying to show concern that, hey, you are not the only ones hurting. It also hurts me, I think I find from that end perspective a sense of trying to reflect some empathy with the people as regards what the crisis they are facing. But it's also paradoxical that on the same day, fresh reports were also coming out of new victims in Benue and elsewhere, as it were. And so the promises in the morning and then the actualities, in the same day, speak to the fact that we have not hit the nail on the head. We've got to deal with this.
Do you agree with some of those who think that it came across to them as though the president didn't really want to make this speech, but I mean, given how brief it was, he didn't speak about democratic, all of those processes, because he's had a battle with the National Assembly, and Nigerians too. We've had serious back and forth between National Assembly, the president, what Nigerians want, the process of democracy. Are we getting better than we were some time ago, 30 years on? So does that in any way make any sense whatsoever?
No, I think I also took note of the brevity of the speech. I had to read through several times. I got the hard copy and I had to read through several times to be sure whether he had even started making the speech by the time he ended. Because substantially it promised nothing. Speeches are made to give the people something, to advance conversations that are ongoing in the
But
politics.
his last one, was he supposed to promise something?
Yes, if the more reason, because it's legacy building. What will you be remembered for? You know, what will you be remembered for? That's what it is. You will be remembered for your soundbite. That is from a media perspective. You also be remembered for your action, what you do, what you give, what you deliver. And if you don't have much that you have done, then you'd better have much that you have said.
And even if he didn't have to promise anything, it was a Democracy Day speech. So do you think he should have captured some progress report on how far we have come in our democracy?
I think so. More so when we are faced with an election that is definitely definitive. Now, look at the process of building to the primaries. Look at the extension that INEC had given. Look at the crowds, that are milling out to vote. So these elections, have remind us of some of the high moments of the nation. We're talking about December 1, 1960.
He said this one will be transparent, as though he says, look, I'm in a hurry, but the elections, it will be transparent. Don't worry about it.
The devil is in the details. You've got to give us something more to hold on to, because transparent is one word, one English word. And
how many were you looking for?
You can stretch it in many dimensions.
I find this quite interesting.
Give me some bites.
Well, yes, so the bites come and people say, well, too much bites, with little bite, as it were. There's so much to talk about, but people say on the ground they rarely see anything. And now this time the president thought, you know what, I don't want to give you too much bites anyway, so let me give you a little bit. But still, it looks like people wanted something way more. But looking at speeches that we've seen over time, and we recall the president's first speech when he said that I belong to everyone and I belong to no one. I'm just paraphrasing. I imagine that was what was said. And, that went far enough. But over time, it would seem as though the significance or the bites from speeches have dropped. So should we really be looking at the speech and how much it offers, or just focus on what's on ground, the actualities, as you said?
No, you do have a point. If we focus on what's on ground, the truth actually is, we started this morning with the power grid. That's what is on ground. You struggle to get a pressed shirt to come out, in the streets.
You can say that again.
Those are the actualities. They are not comforting.
Thank God nobody will know this is not pressed. I had to put a jacket on top of it, but
Chamberlain,
what kind of brother do?
I know.
Chamberlain noted, and you have also rightly noted, the brevity of that speech. And I also noted that Mr. President said twice that this is my last Democracy Day speech. Did you get a sense that Mr. President is perhaps overwhelmed and in a hurry to hand over the reins of power?
I think that you may say that twice, because I watched the primaries of the ruling party, and I also noticed that there was a certain quietness in the entire process, from his side. After all the build-up, I want to anoint my candidate and give me some chance, and all the frenzy that went into the process. I think it's possible, if you do a psychoanalytic reading, to say that, hey, it seems like Baba is tired, He's entitled to being tired, but he has a nation to run. That's the contract.
Are we forgetting that the president did this 4 times before he won? He really wanted this position. Now how can we say now he's tired?
Okay.
He wanted it so badly.
If you're not tired, you should be reinventing. Because when you do the marathon, right? When you do the marathon or you do the relays, you discover that by the time you get to the 3rd lap of the relays, for example, the guy who is taking the 4th, they usually reserve about the strongest guy to take the 4th.
Well, it's only one guy taking all the laps this time around, so
and so we use the marathon, because you notice that when the marathon begins, you don't find the front runner, usually amongst the hustlers. But when you get to the last 3, turns, as it were, you find that the front runner, who has been pacing himself, now moves to finish strong.
I wonder how
this is the time to finish strong.
I wonder how this will apply for the next general elections, because this is going to be one of the longest campaign season. So if there's anyone who you think is a front runner now, think again. Maybe there's somebody making the pace somewhere behind the scenes.
What an interpretation.
You never can tell.
You made this spot on.
A very interesting one. But take a look at the Guardian newspaper next. Of course, the paper focuses on Democracy Day as well, but with a twist, as it were. Emulate Abiola, save Nigeria's democracy. So that's in quotes. I imagine that's being quoted from someone. But let's see if the writers will explain this. Afenifere Soyinka Adams bemoans state of economy governance 23 years after democracy. So I think this is for 1999, not for the June 12, 93. Sanwo-Olu, sacrifices of June 12 responsible for today's democracy. Implement Abiola's manifesto. Family tells FG. PDP tasks Buhari APC on promotion of civil rule. Yakasai. Nigeria needs to catch up with Malaysia, Indonesia. You know, we've heard that quite a lot, and you just wonder, and this is now a marathon, or is it a sprint now? We have so much to catch up. But hey, I guess we'll get there. But I'd like you to speak to this one. It's been on and on for a while now. It looks like that's the next big conversation. 2023, Muslim ticket, recipe for crisis, can insists. I know first we dealt with zoning. You know, it's time for the north, time for the south. No, it's southeast. It's north central. In fact, it is northeast. And we went on and on about that for a while. But it looks as though all that was thrown away, it would seem. But now we're at this crossroad. Muslim ticket. Religion, again, when it comes to politics. What's your take on this?
You know, I think you can use the point, this point to describe it, which is that if you cover up a pot of boiling water, it does not say it's not boiling, right? Because
I tried it burnt my tongue.
At the end of the day, the vapor, the heat, and all of that would come out. I think what has happened is that Nigeria was negotiated from the beginning, and the faults, the distortions in the negotiations are those that are jumping at us now. Because we try to be smarter than ourselves. Nigeria was negotiated as a federation. A federation implies that it's a diverse, arrangement. It's an arrangement to suit a diverse set of people. But we kept, cornering to the unitary post. Now the insistence is coming, return to a federation, because if you don't get back to a federation, I saw this quote by Obafemi some time ago, and says that even if you find some states that are supposed to be federations that are not federations, that are not running proper federal systems, a matter of time they will crash. And he was making that reference in relation to the Soviet Union and a few of the other states, that in themselves, have gone into difficulties.
So if you could link this, so you're talking about federation, as it were, but this conversation on religion, how does that link up? Are you saying if we go back to federative units, then this talk about religion or ethnicity won't play as much role in our political conversation? Or what exactly? How do you link them?
That's the point. You see, the reason why Muslim zoning and all those issues are coming again and again is because they were there at the beginning and they were supposed to be properly accommodated in the mix. We tried dodging.
So you're saying you don't agree with this talk about either Muslim ticket, or you don't even mind as far as they're competent?
No. I don't even take the word competent. There's enough competence in every local government in this country. So I think we should not even bring the word competence into the discussion of leadership. We should talk about inclusiveness. There are women, there are young people, there are ethnicities, there are religions in Nigeria. When you start saying, forget about them, no. Let us put our differences on the table and accommodate them in a systemic order. Right, in a systemic order. It doesn't take away anything from us. It's about honesty. It's the fact that there are Muslims in Nigeria and they are predominant in certain parts of the country. There are Christians in Nigeria, they are predominant in certain parts of the country. There are young people across Nigeria, there are women across Nigeria, and Nigeria must be an inclusive state that works for all. So that means that if you've got, for me, my best model is the Swiss model.
Yeah.
It's the Swiss model. right? Take your turn, shift. Take your turn, shift.
So you have
take your turn,
presidents
shift.
in waiting.
Presidents in
All
waiting.
the cabinets.
So the country keeps running because we're actually
And they're all elected at the same time.
at the same time. So we're actually just, burning hot hair by refusing to be practical. The founding fathers gave us a federation, a proper federation. Return to a proper federation, and 90% of this challenge is over.
And are you noting that in contradiction to what we had in 2014, this time around, there's some interests that are passing it, underscoring it as okay that it can pass this time around. What interest is it trying to suit?
No, I think there's mischief. If you say it's okay, right, you've got to give me the parameters, because between 2014, between MKO in 93, between 2014 and now, right, the structural engine of this federation has spread further apart. That's the reality on the ground. Benue Kenyans, who is Kenyan in Benue? The Boko Haram, the ISIS, the ISWAP, and all the other tendencies, where are they coming from? When you now start talking about secessionists, of that strength, they are being propelled by the fact that there's not enough adequate representation. So the biggest challenge of Nigeria is to represent all. Put us all in the room, right? You take your piece, you take your piece. And that means you need to loosen up. You need to loosen up in the sense that at the regional, regional or zonal levels, as you call it, put a lot of it. Why does somebody have to give me power from Zungeru? When I live in Ogun State or in Lagos State, why do I have to wait for a grid that, keeps dropping? No. Give me my mini grid in my square system, right? Everyone has his mini grid and everybody goes happy, in that sense.
Sounds like we need a new bridge without grid, huh?
So let's see if the Daily Trust has something about representation this morning as we flip. The big story here says, Democracy Day, Nigerians seek more dividends. The riders go thus: we must get it right in 2023. That's attributed to governors. Don't use religion, ethnicity for campaign, CDD tells politicians. Abiodun Fintiri free 46 inmates. That's in the spirit of Democracy Day. Now let's go further down to the bottom strip. Terrorists killed 55 ironmongers in 3 weeks. That's coming from the police. How we thwarted plans to bomb Abuja, Kano, defense chief. Mixed reactions as Owo Indigene links attack to missed target. And that's what I want you to speak to. Looks like there's some story coming out from Owo about the June the 5th massacre. Is this plausible?
I really don't know. Security matters are first professional matters. They touch everybody, but they are first professional matters. By the time we had that National Council of State or National Council on Security, come out, make those statements and start asking us to start looking for ISWAP, as the source of, that problem. It was problematic for me because you were foreclosing, other possibilities, Because you've got to, when you have a security crisis, until you start getting suspects, until you start getting very serious, details, we can't pinpoint that this is it, because criminals themselves don't run on a straight route. So I think that we need to do something about ensuring that before information of a security nature comes from the agencies that are entrusted to do that professionally, they should be thorough. They should be free from politics, they should be free from conjectures, and they should be plausible, acceptable, best practices. And if we need help, we should ask for help. Because many of these details are not adding up. You get the story that says, they may have caught some of the suspects. You get this other story that says, no, they have not caught any of the suspects. But part of the reason why the rumor mills are moving on is because you are not also getting, fresh, reliable information. Why don't you brief us on a daily basis and say, this is it, this is the progress. If there's no progress, then you talk about, you have cold leads, and then you ask where you can find help to be able to resurrect those ones. So I think we may have to sit down and look again and say, our security infrastructure, how is it? Is it adequate? Is it fit for purpose?
All right, take a look at New Telegraph this morning. 2023, they're talking politics as well. Party chieftain drags Tinubu Atiku to court over funding. Once both candidates barred from election, seeks the registration of APC PDP. Interesting or what?
Interesting. Quite interesting. You know, INEC would have to go back, INEC and the nation would have to go back and deal with the issue of money in politics. It's a major issue. It's particularly when you have on the reverse side this high incidence of poverty. You know, and then you also have all the discolorations in the system.
But we saw EFCC at the primaries, APC and PDP primaries, so we expect that at least they saw some things and the investigations are on, perhaps made some arrests and all of that. Are you saying we shouldn't expect anything from that?
We watched the videos. We saw the operatives come into the center.
Yeah.
They've not spoken to us since they got there. They've not spoken to us. They didn't tell us why they went. They didn't tell us what they saw. They didn't even give us an advisory.
They obviously didn't go there to vote. Clearly, I'm sure they went to do their jobs, I imagine.
Right? So they did their jobs, and we've not gotten the updates.
Well,
except they are passing it to INEC for INEC to take judicial notice.
It appears you were expecting a certain kind of update. So who knows? And then you see the same narrative. Muslim tickets will lead to chaos, says can president. And you wonder, I mean, the president, you know, they say he consistently had 12 million votes. He saw the need to do the contrary and not take a Muslim ticket. But now they're talking about this. So you wonder, do these people have 12 million votes in the kitty already, or better than that of the president to talk about this? But who knows? That's New Telegraph anyways.
Well, next up is Leadership newspaper with this one. As Buhari's administration winds down in 11 months, Nigeria still grapples with terrorism, kidnappings, killings. It's a page 4 read. 913 killed, 265 abducted in 421 attacks last month. Now that's according to a report. Perhaps more details on that report will be on the inside pages. I see 30 wedding guests kidnapped in Sokoto, 11 killed in Benue. Southwest governors revisit state police to strengthen Amotekun. We have done a lot to tackle challenges defense. So I think this just captures the state of things generally in Nigeria. Just to also mention this one. Don't pay lip service to credible election. PDP replies PMB. So you had the president speak, and as you would expect, the opposition, of course, spoke as well. A couple of other stories are on the front page this morning. By the way, IGP deploys DIG, 4 AIGs, 4 helicopters for Ekiti election. By the way, I didn't see the exact figures of policemen deployed. I was looking out for that. But I think maybe the police has learned. Once you see 30-something thousand, you wonder, what happens to other places? So we didn't quite see that. But for transparency's sake, I think we should have the figures at least. I'll leave it there for the Leadership newspaper.
I wonder why they can't deploy this number to kidnappers. Catch those who are kidnapping people. Why is it always only for politics?
Politics is hot potato.
I like that description. And from Leadership newspapers, let's quickly look at Daily Independent. And Daily Independent chose a slightly different path this morning, away from politics in its big story. It says stakeholders query identity of 95% investors, directors. That's what I want you to speak to. But let's quickly look at other stories.
That's for Nigeria Air.
Nigeria Air.
Yeah.
Politicians mulling Muslim tickets, inviting chaos, can warns. And one more story from the left-hand corner. We averted catastrophic incidents in Abuja, Kano last week, attributed to military chief. Now let's go to stakeholders query identity of 95% investors, directors. You know, that's about the new national carrier that has since obtained its license. Do you think this call for transparency is in the right, regard?
No, perfectly so. You are dealing with business, and in business, and you are talking about the antecedents of the old Nigeria Airways and the fact that we have to get it better. You know, if you are going to do Nigeria Air, then you've got to put your cards on the table. And the structure is supposed to be a public-private partnership. The private sector will not take you serious if they don't have the facts on the table. You know, government can run its rings, but if you are going to call the private sector in, and if you want efficiency and if you want better outcomes, then you've got to put all the cards on the table. Ultimately, I would expect that firm would have to be listed on the stock exchange, you know, and that also means governance issues are core.
The Abuja Inquirer is talking about the area councils. So they say that it's about uneasy calm ahead of swearing in. House Security Report hastened process. Outgoing chairman vowed to fight on. Abuja natives warn troublemakers to stay off. So I guess it never ends. Well, there you go. That is it with a look at some of the dailies here today. Mr. Richard Mama has taken us through some of them. He's the editor-in-chief and publisher of The Difference. He used to be the editor of Business Hallmark. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much.
We will be back in a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Well, yes, still talking security. And as you may have seen in that welcoming slide, we've got His Excellency Dr. Kaide Fayemi, Governor of Ekiti State and Chairman of Governors Forum. He joins us this morning from Ado Ekiti. Good morning, Your Excellency. Thank you for joining us today on the program. Well, the flags of... Yeah.
Good morning, Chamberlain.
Thank you. The flags will fly half-mast today in the Southwest for 3 days, as the Southwest governors have directed as a result of the killings in Owo, the church there. So the governors met, reviewed the scenarios there, and then you came up with some release. So could you just give us some background to this? Because even prior to this time, the Ondo State governor has spoken about this. I mean, clearly, many were paid. But what was the immediate impression that the Southwest governors had before calling this meeting?
Well, good morning, Chamberlain, and good morning to your viewers at home. What happened on June the 5th will go down in the annals of Nigeria's history as one of the most heinous, vicious attack on innocent citizens of this country. When citizens get to the point where they are living in fear of going to their normal places of worship, of going to their farms or workplaces, then that's almost a state of Armageddon. And when we met, we were basically not just reviewing what happened, which led to the loss of now over 40 innocent people in Owo, Ondo State, but the general security situation in the Southwest, as well as in the country. And we're still finding it very hard to comprehend what happened, because this is the first time such an attack would happen in the South. So yes, we know that this may have happened in other parts of the country in times past, but we've tried within the limits of our powers to anticipate and prevent this sort of heinous crime against humanity. And that was partly what led to the establishment of Amotekun, which we did almost 2 years ago now, to complement the efforts of the mainstream security agencies. And now we don't want to jump to any conclusion as to why what happened in Owo until full investigations are conducted, and we await the result of those investigations. But pending the time that happens, we feel that we need to build the confidence of our people, address the agitations that are widespread in the whole of the Southwest at this moment, and work with the federal institutions, particularly the intelligence agencies, the security agencies, to reorganize and refocus the architecture in order to respond and address this very unfortunate development. This is a war on the people, and there's no other way to describe it, and that's why we're taking the steps we're taking. Flying the flag at half-mast is just a symbolic indication of how much of a crisis of security that we're in, and why an attack on Owo is an attack on all of us in Nigeria. We are all from Owo now, and we must do everything to stop a repeat of this. And we hope that the security institutions will cooperate with us to address this terrible tragedy that occurred in Owo.
We'll go through some of the recommendations in that communique in just a moment. But, you know, the governors, the decision you took is not just an isolated one as a result of what transpired recently in Owo, because governors have lots and lots of security information in the states, across the region, across the country. So if normal residents were surprised, I'm wondering, were the governors actually surprised at this, or do you think someone somewhere dropped the ball? That's why I'm asking, what kind of impression and picture do the governors have for this?
Yes, Chamberlain, we are privy to all manner of intelligence, all manner of security information, but it's not all intelligence that is actionable intelligence. And when intelligence is actionable, our duty is to pass it to the relevant institutions responsible for this, even when they come to our attention. I don't want us to jump the gun as far as this is concerned, and that is why I'm not going to go into any detail as to what intelligence we had and at what point we had it. But suffice it to say that the security institutions are conducting their own investigations now. We are also, in our own way, complementing that effort. The governor of Ondo State has already reassured the citizens of the state that he's going to go after these people, track them, apprehend them, and ensure that they are held culpable for this crime against humanity. This is a crime that has attracted global attention. So it's not just us that are now tracking this. There are sister institutions that are not necessarily even Nigerian that are helping to track what transpired on June the 5th. So I would just say that let's tarry, let's await the outcome of the investigation whilst we continue to provide necessary measures to protect the citizens of our states.
Well, does your intelligence also point to ISWAP?
You just heard me that I am not going to go into any speculation. As far as I'm concerned, statements about ISWAP or Boko Haram or whatever other institutions is responsible for this is purely speculative at this stage. I haven't seen any evidence that concretely puts these in the corner of any of these rogue elements that we have. But it really doesn't at this stage matter. They've committed this crime. They've demonstrated capacity to cause maximum damage to our people. Our duty as security officers is to ensure that this does not occur again, and that we go after elements of this nature, whichever organization they may represent within our domains. And that's precisely what is happening right now.
So I'd like you to speak to us specifically now about the outcome of that meeting. Yes, and we understand 3 days of mourning, the flags flying at half-mast and other, related issues, but particularly the outcome of this, because in the communique released, the governor said that this incident and others have compelled immediate intervention to stem the tide. Those are the words used. So what are those immediate interventions that were resolved upon during the meeting?
It's very difficult for me to start going into the specifics of the security arrangements that we have to protect citizens on the full clear lights of Channels Television. That's playing into the hands of the enemy. I'm not going to do that. All I'm going to tell you is that that statement means exactly what it says. Intervention would require a range of interventions, security, economic, political, and otherwise. So just allow us to put it in the manner that we've put it in the communique. And we would continue to work with those institutions that are empowered to take steps to stem the tide of this unfortunate development.
Well, you earlier said as well that, you have intelligence, you hear from perhaps the people, even Amotekun itself, which we'll come to, but you said not all intelligence is actionable, that what you do essentially is pass that intelligence to the appropriate agencies. I know that for as long as I can remember, this conversation about state police has been on. The governors as a whole, they have resolved that state police is the way to go. And I'd like you perhaps to give us a simple reason as to why state police is not in operation yet, even though we have identified it as a solution, at least a possible solution to these challenges. Is it merely because the president has said it is not an option?
I don't think so. I think the reason why we don't have state police is simply because internal security is in the exclusive list of the Nigerian Constitution. And anything that is in the exclusive list of the Nigerian Constitution resides in the domain of the federal government, the central government. So it has nothing to do, the president is not responsible for the constitution of the country. And I know for a fact that currently the country is going through a constitutional reform process. We don't know yet if that is something that will come out of that process. But that is a process, it's not an event. If citizens have come to the conclusion, just as governors have, that multi-level policing that will complement both federal police is the way to go in order to bring security closer to the people, then there are representatives of the citizens in the National Assembly, and they're the ones responsible for the amendment of the Constitution. We would expect that that's something that will be of concern to them and that they would activate in the process of constitutional reform. So I don't think it's fair to blame the president. The president may have a personal opinion on this, and he's entitled to his opinion, just as other citizens are entitled to their own opinion.
So, Your Excellency, still on the state police, it's not in the ongoing constitution review. So is that to say that this administration is not favorably disposed to it, and as a result, we're left at the mercy of the state of insecurity as it is, and state police cannot address it?
I don't believe that this administration micromanages the legislative process. This administration is a recipient of legislative ideas and thoughts. Don't forget, the ruling party, the All Progressives Congress, has a position on this. We had the Nasru El-Rufai Committee on True Federalism, and one of the recommendations of that committee, which the party adopted, was that most state police should form part of the constitutional reform. So if members of the National Assembly have not come to that decision, it may well be it's because they did not get enough numbers. You know, for constitutional reform process to happen, they need 2/3 of the membership of the legislative body, and that's something that may not have been attained in that process. But don't forget that that process is going through state assembly ratification at this point in time. And I am aware that the state assemblies may have also indicated that they would like to have this as an issue reflected in the constitutional reform process.
Part of the communique was to review Okada operations because of the concern of the influx of Okada in much of the Southwest. Are we to expect anything significant in this review of Okada operations in the Southwest, particularly an outright ban in their operations?
A review does not necessarily mean a ban. It says a review of the operations. And it's that review that will determine what we do. And it has to be taken on a state-by-state basis as well, even as we try to have a regional outlook as far as that is concerned. I think it's a no-brainer why we're concerned about the activities of Okada. We have discovered not once, not twice, in the intelligence gathering that has consistently gone on in our various states, that some of these elements purportedly undertaking commercial transportation are themselves agents of these criminal bandits that are ravaging the whole of the country. And clearly we need to balance the need for economic sustenance at the level of citizens with the need for security of the citizens. And I think that's what that review would come out with.
If then there is no strong measures emanating from this Southwest Security Committee, what would you say to those who say, oh, they're meeting again as they did in 2019, and hence there won't be anything different this time, we're just going to go back to the status quo in another few months? What would your explanation be to that?
Well, I have not told you that nothing would come out of our meeting. As a matter of fact, we are holding a physical meeting. The meeting to which you referred was a virtual meeting in the immediate aftermath of what happened in Owo. But we have now called a physical meeting that would also have security chiefs involved in it. We continue to engage with federal security officials on this matter, and we would just urge our people to be patient. We can understand the grief and the agitation in our communities as far as this issue is concerned, but precipitate action is also not what would get us to where we want to be. We need to be measured, we need to be focused, we need to be driven by data and fact, and we need to ensure that technology begins to play a much more significant role in our security operations. And that's precisely what would come out of this exercise.
Well, the meeting also did recommend that there will be an increase in the surveillance activities of some of these undocumented migrants or residents, as it were. But we also do know that before now, when some of these local security agencies were set up, funding was a challenge. Do we take it for granted that the region will address headlong this question of funding, or is not a challenge at all?
Are you talking about funding, or you're talking about undocumented
No,
residents?
there'll be several activities that will be taken.
Those are two different issues.
There'll be several activities that will be taken.
Absolutely.
The review may mean that you have to deploy certain things to other places. You may need to even up the ante for Amoteco and several other agencies, and funding had always been a challenge. So I'm asking, will funding be an issue this time, or given the scenario now, we don't expect it to be a challenge?
Well, funding would always be a concern of government because we're dealing with competing demands when you are in government. And all of these demands are important, but nothing is more important than the security of our citizens. And that is why in the hierarchy of needs, we need to provide for the security of the citizens. And we will stop at nothing in spending whatever is required in order to attain a level of security that we're comfortable with. So funding in terms of having all the available resources would always be a challenge, but we will prioritize security over other things. And if that means expanding the capacity of the local security network, Amotekun, and supporting the security agencies, which we have always done. We've always supported the police. We've always supported the military. We've always supported civil defense. That is something we do as a matter of fact in all our states. So we will not relent at doing this.
Just to be clear, I mean, still on that point, but the other leg of Chamberlain's question about the undocumented migrants, according to the statement, it says that unidentified people, undocumented settlers are taking spaces in the Southwest. I mean, how is that even possible that people will come perhaps from anywhere and take spaces in the Southwest? That's not an ungoverned space, essentially, a space or a state that has government, that has security operatives. How is that even possible?
I'm sure you know that the Constitution of Nigeria guarantees freedom of movement to all Nigerians, as long as it's proven that they're Nigerians. Where the problem arises from is even in being sure that these are Nigerian citizens. You have mechanisms for documenting people who come into communities. Right from way back, even before we have modern technology, we have always had systems in communities. You cannot come into any local community in the Southwest without someone notifying the royal father, the Oba in that community, and then asking questions about who this person are, what they're doing there, and so on and so forth. But some of the ungoverned spaces being referred to are our forests. Many of these forests are being taken over by elements that are unidentified. And one of the measures that we are taking across the length and breadth of the Southwest is clearing those forests of unidentified elements who constitute a threat to our people, the citizens of Nigeria residing in that particular area. So that's precisely what that statement refers to. You have a lot of forests in the Southwest. It's a heavily forested area, but many of the forests have been taken over by people whose provenance, whose antecedents and knowledge are really not available to government agencies. So working in concert, we would ensure that we do that. And the reason why we have to come together the way we've always done is that those forests traverse our states. I mean, you can come from the Ogbese forest, for example, in Ondo State, and come into Emure Ise in Ekiti State. And you still can go into Kwara, you can go into Kogi via those same heavily forested areas. It's only commonsensical that we work together in order to stop this influx that is now constituted itself into a security threat to our citizens.
And perhaps that points to the reason why now there's a need to reconvene that Southwest Security Committee, which was also contained in the statement. But I'll need you to speak to a point I made earlier about whether or not your intelligence points to ISWAP, because particularly in that communique issued, the governors talked about this insidious phenomenon of insurgency, about nipping it in the bud. I mean, Southwest is not a place or a region known for terrorism or insurgency. So can you tell us, to what extent has insurgency perhaps taken root in the Southwest?
Well, insecurity comes in different guises. What is insurgency in the Northwest may transform itself into banditry or kidnapping in the Southwest, utilizing the resources that you get from that to continue to fund insurgencies in other parts of the country. What we cannot doubt even if, as you correctly identified, insurgency has not been a problem in the Southwest, what is not in doubt is the inextricable nexus that now exists between those responsible for insurgency in the northeastern part of the country and those involved in banditry in the northwest are now coming south in search of resources in order to fund their nefarious activities in the areas where they have hitherto operated. And it is that chain that must be broken, that nexus. That is why we in the Southwest that are seeing these activities metamorphosizing into insecurity in our space must be concerned with what is going on in other parts, because we must concern ourselves with insecurity in any part of Nigeria. That is what this has pointed to. We cannot just play the ostrich and say, oh, insurgency in the northeast is the problem of the governor of Borno and Adamawa, or banditry in the northwest is the problem of the northwest governors. Not our business. We all have to become engaged in these issues with a view to clearing all these problems from our country. That is really the ultimate. Is not even to just take an isolated view, because, as I said, these things are inextricably linked, and we must respond to them in an integrated fashion, retool our security architecture, recruit more men into our security agencies, increase the use of technology, satellite surveillance, drone coverage, telephone tracking. All of these things need to now be much more accelerated and revved up in order to address the problem that has now come upon us. Yes, we may not be an insurgency zone, but all of these things, they are pure terror. They are acts of terror. There's no other way to describe what happened in Owo. And it is not different from what had happened in Madala near Abuja, or what has been going on in the northeast of this country. We must take an integrated approach to resolving this problem, not an isolated, ad hoc approach.
You know, I do remember some time ago when you visited the Niger State governor, he had a challenge in his state about banditry, kidnapping, and he said he reached out to the federal government and they were not forthcoming. And you said at the time, too, that, look, we shouldn't delude ourselves, that some of these elements, this Boko Haram, ISWAP, whatever they call themselves, have found their way down south, having been dispersed in some of those areas, and we needed the strong response. And in a similar manner now, you speak about this integrated approach. So looking through these comments, at what point does the federal government come in here? Because some of the methods, the strategies you've highlighted here require federal government intervention or cooperation with the Southwest states. When do they come in here?
Well, already the federal government is in. The federal government has its assets in all of our states. The military is here, the security service, DSS is here, the police has always been here, but we need a much more integrated response. We're talking to the National Security Advisor about many of these issues. The president himself is very seized of the challenge that we're faced with in the Southwest. But you know, these are not matters, as I indicated earlier, that I can be divulging specifics to your audience. I would just crave your indulgence to continue to work with these agencies and also restore the confidence of our people by taking measures that are visible, that are measurable, that they can see taking in the interest of the citizens, not just tracking these people, but bringing them to book in the shortest possible time.
Your Excellency, this increased surveillance that Chamberlain referenced earlier, and which you have now talked about, collaboration with the military, the police, and other security agencies, as we see it, you know, perhaps it will form part of your recommendations, I expect, after your physical meeting. Will it address this problem of lack of clear chain of command amongst them, which is the criticism against, security agencies as they work together? I imagine, would it be part of the subject that will be addressed at your security meeting? And give us a sense of what recommendations or what conversations would take place in that regard.
We're not military people and we're not police officers. We're concerned primarily by the challenge that we are confronted with in security of our citizens. How the security institutions do their work, that's their professional duty. They're trained. They know how to undertake joint operations, and they do that from time to time. If there is conflict in their areas of responsibility or confusion in delineating who is responsible for what, I'm sure there are mechanisms within the security architecture to address those, and we'll continue to encourage them to do that. All we can do as leaders of our people and chief security officers in our state is to highlight what we see and then call for measures that would enable us sleep with our two eyes closed. And whatever we then need to do to support the security institutions to help achieve that, then we will do it. And we have been doing it, including providing the necessary support to those security institutions in our state and collectively.
There's a lot of frustration in those areas in Southwest and different parts of the country, and rightly so. People will be concerned if this manner of killing happens anywhere in the parts of the country. So what, to the extent that, we see certain people taking laws into their hands and doing several other things, what would you tell citizens who are watching now who are so frustrated at either the response coming from government authorities or relevant bodies who should be preventing these kind of things from happening? Can you hear me? Oh dear, I think we lost. Not sure. Can you hear me, Excellency? Okay, I think we lost that communication, but just in the nick of time, I guess. Well, we have to thank His Excellency, Dr. Kaide Fayemi, Governor of Ekiti State and Chairman. Okay, Your Excellency, just one more thing. I did say that lots of residents are frustrated, not just in Southwest, across the country, different parts, because when this manner of killing happens, anyone will be frustrated, to the extent that some of them take laws into their hands where they shouldn't be. What would you tell residents who are listening now in terms of what to do, response from them, and conducting themselves?
I lost you. I lost you somewhere there, Chamberlain, but I thought I caught the tail end of it, which is why citizens should not take laws into their hands because of agitation arising out of these heinous crimes. Yes, the temptation would always be there for citizens to engage in self-protection, but we can only urge them that the best form of self-protection that we need from our citizens at this point in time is vigilance. They need to give us information when they notice anything untoward in their own community, in their farms, or in any part of their area of residence. They need to give relevant information to the security agencies. Yes, we have seen the impact of citizens-led security outfits like the civilian JTF in the Northeast. And we've also seen the impact of citizens-driven a security outfit like Amotekun in the Southwest. Citizens can be part of that, and would encourage them to be part of that, because eternal vigilance is the price to pay for our freedom and liberty. All of us are security agents, and we need to play our part in order for the mainstream official security agencies to be effective at what they do.
All right, Your Excellency, Dr. Kaide Fahimi, Governor of Ekiti State and Chairman, Governors Forum, thank you for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
We're back in a moment, everyone. Don't go away.
A broadcast as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and it begins by highlighting the nation's challenging journey to uninterrupted democracy. It therefore asks Nigerians to ensure the 2023 general elections are peaceful in honor of the sacrifice of Chief MKO Abiola and others.
We must never forget the sacrifices of the heroes of Nigeria's democracy during 1993. Their patriotism and peaceful struggle should guide our actions, especially when it comes to electing our leaders and holding them accountable now and in future. Fellow Nigerians, this is my last Democracy Day speech as your president. By June 12, 2023, exactly 1 year from today, you will already have a new president. I remain committed and determined to ensure that the new president is elected through a peaceful and transparent process.
President Buhari commends the maturity exhibited by the political class during the primaries while assuring citizens of a credible electoral process.
I will therefore take this opportunity on this very special day to ask all candidates to continue running issue-focused campaigns and to treat opponents with dignity. The tone you set at the top will surely be replicated in your followers. Your right to choose your government will be preserved and protected. I am also promising you a free, fair, and transparent electoral process.
With a brutal killing at the St. Francis Catholic Church in Owo, Ondo State, and citizens still held captive following the attack on an Abuja-Kaduna-bound train in March this year, amongst other security issues, President Buhari recommits to ensuring that justice is done.
On this official day, I want us all to put all victims of terrorist activities in our thoughts and prayers. I am living daily with the grief and worry for all those victims and prisoners of terrorism and kidnapping. I and the security agencies are doing all we can to free those unfortunate countrymen and countrywomen safely. For those who have lost their lives, we will continue to seek justice for their families against the perpetrators. For those currently in captivity, we will not stop until they are freed and their kidnappers are brought to justice.
With these promises by the president, all eyes are now on the federal government to walk the talk to further rebuild citizens' trust in their leaders.
Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Well, yes, we'll talk about a number of things predicating that on the President's Democracy Day speech. We've got two gentlemen, as you may have seen there, joining us to take a look at some of these scenarios. Commander Jerry Omodara, retired. He's the State Security Advisor to Kogi State Government. He joins us from our studios in Abuja. Then we have Eugene Weke, who is a professor of political science and deputy vice chancellor at Bonny State University. Good morning. Thank you for joining us via virtually this morning, Professor Weke. And thank you both for joining us as well. Now, let me start with you, Professor Weke, listening to the President's speech. I know that several things, several impressions that people will have from this kind of speech. But for you, as someone who is in political science, you study these kind of scenarios, what do you think about it?
Thank you, Chamberlain. Let me first of all congratulate Nigerians for celebrating Democracy Day on the speech presented by the President. It is a preparation for an exit. But we still desire much from this speech because the democracy we talk about is grossly threatened by several factors. Yes, there is a promissory note that there will be peaceful election and peaceful transition. But the important question is the institutions that are responsible for such elections have prepared are there. The next thing is we have monumental issues that when they are not addressed cannot ensure credible election and credible democratic protest. And that one of them is the insecurity that you mentioned. Yes, it's a promise that we do, but we need more actions. We expect in that speech to identify actionable issues that will be followed up. And we expected to see or hear from the President the actions already taken, because we do know that the perpetrators of this heinous crime are yet to be brought to book. But the promise has been that they should be brought to book. And if the speech of Democracy Day as presented did not capture some of the expectations of Nigeria in dealing with issues that border on democratic issues, such as the current insecurity, the current participation level of democracy, and the citizen involvement, then we may desire more from the President before he leaves office. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Madara, speak to the security component of that speech, which was heavy on the scheme of things. Yes, he several perspectives which he gave, but for you, yeah, the promises that the president made, his quest to address what's going on, and his message to Nigerians, how does that come across to you, being in the field of security yourself?
Thank you very much, Chamberlain. We equally want to celebrate with Nigeria on this very auspicious occasion. We also want to say that the Mr. President's speech have touched very key area as far as security is concerned. Looking at the current situation in the country, the speech touched very silent areas, particularly on terrorism and kidnapping, as well as informing Nigeria, sympathizing with Nigeria, those that are in captivity, and as well as those, their family, and giving Nigeria assurance that those in captivity will be released. From what Professor Weke was saying, it is not possible for Mr. President to have come to give us detail of what the military or what security agencies will do to accomplish their job. However, the end result will only be what the public will be very happy to see. I was very happy when Mr. President touched the areas of reform within the security structure. And that is very key to Nigeria right now. How do we handle the internal security of Nigeria? The very complex situations that we are experiencing today. Complex in the sense that we have the internal security before, and now with a new perspective of terrorism coming to join what we are having now. That is a big concern. So, Mr. President, I'm not sure he, within the time limit for the democracy brokers, cannot expatiate on all those things, but he have touched key areas, which is now left for security agency, the head of security agencies, to address and let Nigeria see what they are doing. And I think that will be better for the country.
So if you were in the president's shoes and being a security, well, having spent decades in that field, you know what is expected, you have the capacity to ensure that these kind of things don't happen. And then you see that you're giving a speech, and not long after, there's more kidnappings about people who went for a wedding. And then another kidnapping, ransacking the town, several people killed, with the recent one that even happened before the speech. Would you be satisfied, given that speech, that all is well and you expect that everybody will tag along with that kind of hope? Would you have that kind of impression or feeling?
Mr. President, yeah.
If you were the president, you would be okay with that?
Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, I'm satisfied with what was given to Nigeria. What is left, the missing link is just for us now to be able to see what security agencies are doing. I see a lot of disconnect. Disconnect in the sense that with our security apparatus today, we are not leveraging on what we have very well to tackle the security emerging from every part of the country. It is very key that Nigeria have gone to this level, but coming from the field, it's very clear that Mr. President cannot go one after the other of what all the security agencies are doing to start speaking to them. But what is important is key factors that must take place. What happened now? I just spoke concerning disconnect. We have three levels of government in Nigeria: the local government, the state, and the federal government, and their responsibilities across the three levels of government. But are we doing the right thing? I'm coming from the field, from Kogi State.
Who are the we here?
If what Mr. President has said,
yeah, Mr. Madara, when you say
addressing the right thing,
when you say we are not doing the right thing, who specifically do you refer to?
Yes. Within the three levels of government in Nigeria, as far as security is concerned, I'm in the field. For the last 6 years, we've been able to handle security in Kogi State. It has to do with leadership. Leadership is key as far as security is concerned. When you give direction at the local government level, their level of security, internal security, they must handle. Take, for example, in Kogi State, if anything happens within an hour or two in a local government, if my office is not informed, the governor is not informed, the chairman of the local government is in trouble.
But
there are areas they must handle.
You said a while ago,
the state governor,
a moment ago, that you are satisfied with what the president is doing or with what was given to Nigeria. Now you say leadership is key, as though there are big question and gaping holes in the leadership which hasn't delivered the kind of security confidence that the country needs.
Remember, I spoke on the three levels of leadership: local government, the state governor, and Mr. President. We are addressing the Mr. President speech, and from what areas he have touched, the sympathy, the reform, the asset acquisition that have been gotten by the government, and the deployment. The president talked about all those areas. And if we have talked about those areas, we are now talking of leadership at all levels. It is not only Mr. President that must do the job. No. Local government chairman has his own responsibility, along with his councillors and all the local government apparatus. There is no local government you don't have security in Nigeria. There is no state you don't have federal presence as far as security is concerned. Utilization of those security apparatus is the key. When you have failed to do it,
okay, so give us some practical examples.
When you have failed to provide the necessary.
Let me jump in. Give us some practical examples. Now that you see the terrorists attacking in different parts of the country, there's kidnapping, banditry, you're saying that the local governments are supposed to play a role. Is that to mean that they're supposed to face this AK-47 or AK-49 wielding terrorists?
No.
How should they respond?
No. I enumerated two levels of security. First, we have the internal security, and before the coming of the terrorist activities, which is very, you cannot talk about that irresponsibility of the state and the federal government. And even at the local government, intelligence. There is no criminal that will go to any community without anybody knowing. Let me give you a practical example. In September last year, we had issues of attack at Kaba prison. A lot of inmates were released. We analyzed it. First, they came almost about 9:45. They wore uniform, they were well organized, they came in buses. And in analyzing at security meetings, I told them, expect it in another state. Within the next 5 weeks, it happened in Osun State. The same time they came in Kogi, the same time the way they operated. And I said, these people, they are still going to operate. The next, they moved to Plateau State. We are disjointed as far as security is concerned in Nigeria. We don't follow, we don't have data to know. And most of the security agencies, I must confess, even at the federal level, are working individually. Where you don't have cooperation, it is not for Mr. President to come and do your job for you. We must interact very well. We must make sure that all the security agencies have database. When that happened, the one that happened in Kaba again, it first happened in Okene, in Kaba. The next we have was in Owo. Expect it another time, in another state. And that is what we must begin to do. If we fail to connect all this disjointed activity in various states and local governments, and we think it is the business of Kogi State, it is business of Ondo State, then we are not yet ready.
So
we have.
Are people supposed to? The impression that some may get from what you just said is that, well, if it is not, it's not the president's responsibility to come and do their jobs for them. So are they then supposed to be allowed to remain in those positions if they have demonstrated huge incapacity?
Certainly, when you are talking of capacity of remaining in office.
Is it yes or no?
At every level, there must be punishment. If there is failure, if there is failure, and it is noticed, yes, what are we waiting for? But as far as we are concerned,
what are we, or what is the president waiting for?
They are doing the best. No. Remember the last time the whole Nigeria were clamoring that we must change the service chiefs. But are we saying the Nigerian military that have performed so well in international assignments are not doing well again? No, it is just because we have failed in Nigeria to separate politics from security. A lot of insecurity in the country today are more or less political motivated. And that is what we are doing until we are able to talk to ourselves. You see, you cannot bath and not see your own nakedness. We are bathing and feeling that we are not seeing our nakedness, and it cannot work.
You talk about punishment. You said there must be punishment. So who should be punishing who?
It depends where the offense is committed. If at a local government, I remember just about 2 months ago,
if the security agencies are not working together,
Mr.
Madara, just a minute. If the security agencies are not working together, using your own example, what should happen in that case? Who should punish who?
That is when you notice, when they are not working together. It is only the need to harmonize, and that is leadership. Mr. President have a responsibility to ensure. He met with the head of security agencies. He met with service commander, he met with the NSA. So it is now left to see the gaps. If anyone is found not doing his job, there's no problem. You deal with the issue the way it is. And it is not until you remove somebody from office you are punishing the person. No. And even removing from office is only to safeguard the person.
All right, Mr. Madara, we'll talk more about that. Particularly, we'd like to know if, a head should be rolling within the context of what you're saying now. But let's take a break. You're on to Sunrise Daily on Channels Television. We'll be back shortly.
democracy. The auditorium is filled with the usual host, family members, members of civil society organizations, religious leaders, and other familiar faces. The discussion is centered around the political views, sacrifice, and ideals of the man being celebrated here.
Oil, crude oil, which is fast going away, of Nigeria's former over 300 trillion cubic feet of gas reserve, which we are flaring every day, flaring over 80 to 95%. In another 10 years, my fellow compatriots, we will be hungry because there will be no body requiring your oil. So in memory of Chief MKO Abiola, we should go back to brass tacks and get ourselves a new constitution.
And so we have a collective duty to rebuild democracy. Almost in the way that Chief MKO Abiola's candidacy made us forget all those funny things we like to pretend that we care about. Ethnicity, religion, this, that.
It's a political season, and an event like this attracts players in politics and also calls for a reflection on issues facing the nation.
All we can do today is what I've told people while I was on my way here, is to reflect and examine our lives as Nigerians and ask ourselves questions. For what he sacrificed for, where are we today? For all he wanted to do for Nigeria, where are we today? I think he was the first person that made me to vote in Nigeria.
My take from this gathering is that a lot has been said to repeat, the history and exactly all of the things, that happened prior to the election of Basharun, MKO Abiola, and the subsequent events.
They gather around the tomb of the renowned businessman and politician. They chant in unison like they've always done for so many years.
29 years after, God has preserved many of you who fought so valiantly, so sacrificially, and many of you are here today.
The laying of wreath marks the end of this year's event at the compound of the man many believe paid the ultimate price for Nigeria's democracy. Dari Ido, Channels Television News.
Indeed, welcome back to Sunrise Daily on Channels Television. There you just saw that report on Democracy Day, particularly celebrating the national hero, Chief MKO Abiola. And that's still our thrust on the program today as we unpack the President's Democracy Day speech and look at particularly the issues of insecurity and other related matters. We still have with us in the House Commodore Jerry Omodara, retired commander, Nigerian Navy, and former Pro-National Defense College, Nigeria, and he's the State Security Advisor to the Kogi State Government. We also have Professor of Political Science, Ebonyi State, who is joining us via Zoom, Professor Eugene Nweke. Thank you, gentlemen, for holding on so far. So I'm coming to you now, Professor Nweke. Commodore Modara was talking about politicization of insecurity. He also referred to the need for punishment. I imagine you would want to speak to some of those things that he said.
Yeah, thank you very much. Security in Nigeria is actually politicized. But we're not going to dwell on that politicization of security. We should find solutions. And the reality before us now is that the federal government cannot provide security for Nigerians. The various calls on decentralizing security activities and security architecture of Nigeria is overdue. We expect at this time that states, local government should get involved in dealing with the issue of security. But that borders on constitutional issue. We can no longer dwell on blaming government. We have to dwell on doing the right thing. Let us restructure the security architecture and create the long overdue state police and empower the long overdue private guards and vigilante groups in our various areas. Now, the insecurity that are taking place, most of them are taking place within the rural area. But unfortunately, the local government structure is so disempowered that it cannot even fight security. And this is area we need to look at. Again, people have accused the security arrangement of being lopsided. If we must deal with the security, we must have a security organ or a security council that involves every aspect of the region, because they should be able to give information on what is happening in their various regions. And let me say this, the security challenge we have in the country today could be described as a sectionally oriented based on the issues within that given area. Why bandit may be existing in other places?
You seem to be agreeing with Commodore Modara that the local governments should be on board in tackling insecurity. What roles specifically should they play?
Yes, the local governments, beginning from the traditional rulers, know the terrain more than the government, more than the police or the army that will come from Abuja or whatever. They should be on the forefront, at least by providing information. Two, by being vigilant against movement of aliens into their environment. And I should be able to provide adequate information. Then there will be active response from the security agencies to back up in dealing with such matter. But the issue is that the local government have been so weak that they cannot provide this information.
But some of this information is actually provided if we went by our conversation with His Excellency Governor Kayode Fayemi. But he said some intelligence are not actionable. So it would seem that the local governments here are helpless.
Let me give you an example. When you argue that people move into the forest, that forest is located where? The forest is located in the domain of a traditional ruler, in a domain of a local government council. What did they do? Let me tell you this. With a very strong vigilante group, they can chase out some of those people. And that has worked. Even in the fight against Boko Haram, we know about the success recorded by some hunters. We need to get these people in action. We can no longer be waiting for a national security agent that may not know the system to perform action. So that's an aspect we want them to be actually active, because these services have earlier been provided before now, and it has overworked. But we are losing it by not reactivating that structure. So local government system need to be restructured, need to be given the authority, including financial backing, to perform some of these responsibilities. And I want to tell you that in some places where it has been tried, they are actually functional. And I can give you an example where you have the vigilante group that is complementing the effort of the police and army. In local governments in Ebonyi State, or in Ebonyi State in particular, they have what they call a BAGO. The BAGO has actually complemented the effort of police and has contributed in reducing insecurity in such areas. So we need to invest in that area if we cannot talk about state police now.
And very quickly, one of the things that the president also said was that security equipment purchased some years back have been delivered and will be deployed. And it reminds me of the Super Tucano aircraft that were touted some years ago and delivered last year. But they haven't made any significant difference in the fight against insecurity if we went by the things that we're seeing, the events that we're seeing so far. Should we be excited about these new equipment that have been purchased, according to the president?
The moribund equipment cannot excite anybody. It is a potential, but not activated. Until we activate the available equipment, the security institution will continue to increase. And let me say this again. The insecurity is increasing because they are tolerated. We have not dealt with it the way we have been dealing with other security issues. We cannot allow people whom we know we can defeat with such equipment you mentioned, with other ones that have not been used, and we think we can deal with security. No, the answer is no. We must begin to disseminate, deal with them wherever they are, using available equipment. And the security apparatus, the security agencies themselves may be willing, but if they are not adequately mobilized with those equipment, can they perform? The answer is no. So we need to equip them, activate them, and mobilize them into action. And these issues of insecurity will be a thing of the past.
Well, there was this issue we touched on just before we went on break with Commander Modara in our Abuja studio about, it looks like some people are not doing their jobs in the security agencies. And the question was, who should do what? Should they be fired? Should they be reprimanded? And I'd like to get your views as a political scientist. There's a social contract that the government has with people. And when it appears as though one side is not living up to at least the dictates of that particular contract, then action should be taken. Now, specifically when it comes to security, well, Commander Modari to an extent agrees that certain people are not doing what they ought to do, perhaps at the grassroots level or across the chain. What should be done? Who should take the decisive action? He said the president cannot do their jobs for them, but what can the president do, or at least others in position of authority?
First, if somebody is failing to perform, someone else should be put in the place to perform. Change of guard is very, very critical. But it is beyond change of guard. There is a conspiracy against the citizens of Nigeria. Conspiracy in delivery of justice and conspiracy in fighting criminalities and crime across the country. Now, if we are committed and prepared, it can be delivered. So let us destroy the conspiracy of excuses and blaming that we don't have this, we don't have that. No, that's not the solution to our challenge. We need to activate the process.
Who should champion this, Prof? Who should champion?
The citizens.
Okay, not the leaders citizens. Now, the citizens.
The citizens, yes, the citizens, we need to take our responsibility. You see, we can no longer be relying on services that we cannot get. You call police to come for action, and before they could arrive, there will be excuses of no vehicle, no fuel, so what do we do? And that's why the issue of reactivating a very strong vigilante groups, people cannot have the state police, which may take a long time. But at least we can reactivate a very strong vigilante group across the state of the country, across Nigeria, everywhere, local government and thereabouts.
But Prof,
this can be achieved.
I understand, pardon me to jump in, but let's be practical. At least let's take the example of the attack we saw in Owo. For example, we heard that the terrorists came with assault rifles. And the best you can even carry as maybe a citizen or a vigilante is maybe a shotgun, or depending on what kind of license you even get. But you can't get an AK-47, at least something you can match the assailants with. And no matter how much vigilantes you have, we hear that these people come with IEDs, improvised explosive devices, and all of that. So really, how much can the people do? Isn't this just even flogging, a weeping child, essentially?
Yes, the core responsibility lies with the state, which is the federal government of Nigeria. When we talk about the complementary aspect of fighting security, we raise those issues. Yes, our response mechanism is very, very poor. It's not that we don't have people who can fight this thing, but how often do they respond? Apart from the Tokuno bombarder aircraft that was brought, we still have other existing equipment that we can use. So we need to activate our response, and that can come if there is a strong synergy between the federal government and the local authorities. Why there's emphasis in local authority is to ensure that the flow of these elements at least checked before the actions are completed. But then, we cannot excuse the federal government or pardon them for inefficiency in fighting security. or addressing the challenges of insecurity in the country. We must blame them for whatever that has happened, because our federal structure is designed in a way that it is only the federal government of Nigeria, led by the president, who is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, that can order an action that can change the course of things. And this is where the point is. Let that action start.
All right.
If it doesn't start, we are going to witness more issues that can overwhelm this country.
Mr. Modara, let's talk about some practical things now in terms of operations of security agencies, because I mean, I hear you speak glowingly about some of the results that you do have. But have you met people, or have you yourself reported any matter to any security agency in this country, even if it's the police, for instance? Do you know the immediate concerns or the steps that need to be taken before they attend to your case?
Certainly. But before I go into that, I'll quickly respond to what Professor Nweke said. I think he's just speaking the mind of Nigeria, and it's as if he's from Kogi State. You see, we have practicalized the use of vigilantes and hunters in our local government, and it's working perfectly. Perfectly in the sense that that is why Kogis today remain one of the safest in Nigeria. We must look at whether I report to any security agencies issues. I'm in the field, and I want to assure you that I left Kogi this morning. The Commissioner of Police will tell you that we have spoken. The Director of SSS will inform you that we have spoken twice today, and that is for us to be able to work together. The state and the security agencies deployed to each of the states, they must take responsibility, they must work together. And I still talk about leadership. When you have a leader that is directing well, you get it well. If anything is happening in Kogi today, and if local government chairman failed to report to me or the governor of the state within the hours, that person is in trouble. And at the same time, Commissioner of Police, the DSS, and Civil Defense in charge of internal security in Kogi, they are working in harmony with the military,
just a minute,
the army, and the navy.
In order to further understand your point about you left Kogi, you spoke with the police and things like that, we're trying to understand what you actually mean by that, because you're an advisor to the state government.
Reports.
I'm sorry?
Yes.
Okay, you're an advisor to
happening within the state.
Okay, you're an advisor to the state governor on security. So you speak to them. You left Kogi this morning, you know, to where you are now for the purpose of this interview. But as an advisor on security, you can't move around without your security detail and aid. Every Nigerian can't afford that. So if you say you left Kogi and came to Abuja because of that, of course you'll be safe, as opposed to somebody who left on their own from Kogi to Abuja. There will be fears and apprehension. That's natural.
There's no doubt about that. But if you travel between Lokoja and Abuja, you will know the security network, the security apparatus that have been put in place.
Yeah, but
just
since they've been put in place,
this morning, I may have my security. I may have my security. However, you know, along the road, we are able to police every area there. You will see the police, you will see the army, you will see the vigilantes, you will see the hunters. And we don't only put them on the road alone. We know where we put them, we know the way we deploy them, so that even if they escape to the bush, we get them at a very short time.
Well, we're trying to just highlight some of the challenges that need to be addressed without
some of the challenges that we must, some of the challenges we need to address as Nigeria.
Okay.
First, our recruitment is faulty. Recruitment is faulty in Nigeria among almost all the security agencies. I think only the DSS goes to the extra mile to know where somebody coming into the service is from. The school he attended, the primary school. We are now having all these terrorists trying to infiltrate our security system. Secondly, deployment is a big challenge in our security setting today. Go to Ikeja area. Hotels there, you will see mobile police all around, deployed, rather than deploy to the highways. We equally have situation where Professor Weke was talking about ungoverned area in Nigeria, where the hunters and vigilantes are very necessary. They are very important to occupy.
Just as we wind down, let me just highlight this.
But those places belong to...
Yeah, pardon me. Some of the issues we want to highlight is that, you know, the challenge that the security agencies, let me say, for instance, the police as one agency, is that ask anyone who has gone, not even those who call the emergency numbers asking the police to respond. Look, the narrative is completely, it leaves a lot to be desired, because either they don't respond or they come when everyone has hours after the robbers have left the scene. But they have a huge funding challenge. If you report a case today, they will tell you either you pay to register your case, you pay for the police's fuel for their vehicle, you mobilize them to get to certain places, because they tell you which police formation gets funding from government agencies. So they tell you, how do you expect them to operate if governors or government don't address those issues? Even the state, you boast so much that the same thing happens there.
Let me tell you, Chabelin.
Tell me.
One key area here is, you see Mr. President talk about reform, restructure of security we have in the country. It's key. First, I've been in Kogi for about 6 years now, and you hardly see each year that police will bring vehicle to the command, except the current IG. Just about a few months ago, vehicles were distributed to states, which is very key. For the first time I'm seeing it. The government is now left at the state to assist the police. The reform we need must start from in-house, of reforming from the IG, telling all the CPs, they must be able to live up to expectation as far as citizen reporting incidences to them. I'm very sure that everybody in Nigeria knows that you cannot go to a police station without paying one bill or the other. But one thing, I experience it. These are the kind of reform Nigeria are expecting to really focus on the insecurity level we are having in Nigeria today.
All right. In other words,
it's not easy for the IG to come down.
What you should then, or what we should then be focusing on, is how do we institutionalize practices that will ensure functionality. It's not about hyping one state governor or the other, because if one state governor leaves office, the next state governor can look at the laws and operate within the confines of the law and say, well, look, it's not my responsibility to pay for this, this, and that. It's federal police, and decide not to do it. And he will be within his rights to do that. So these are fundamentals that need to be addressed, and not us, perhaps looking the other way. But we'll have to thank both of you for coming on. Retired Commander Jerry Omodara, Security Advisor to the Kogi State Government, as well as Professor Eugene Weke, who is the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Professor Political Science, Prof, DVC at Ebonyi State University. Thank you, gentlemen, for talking to us this morning.
Thank you.
Let's look at some messages coming through from you out there. Well, we've got this first one, and it's an email.
Yep.
And it comes from Olagunju Oladele, who says, talking about Southwest security, the best way to handle security issues is to structure the federal system so that most of the power will be vested with the states and local governments. The theory being that government should be representative and responsive to those they governed. When police are commissioned and employed locally, each community can establish its priorities and fine-tune its police to their liking, and he says /culture, breaking the problem into smaller, possible, and practical parts, split down as required, or start with the smallest and merge your way up to the final solution.
I like the way Olagunju
Oladile is quite clinical about that. Take a look at this tweet from Festus Akimboewa saying that Southwest governors are carrying out reviews of security in the region is commendable. There's a need to understand the underlying drivers of these heinous crimes better and act to provide, or rather prevent them. If it's confirmed that Al-Qaeda is used in the attack, it should be banned.
Let's see the outcome of that review and determine whether to be commendable or not. But let's go from there to Law Alpha Cross, who says the Owo Church bloodbath and many other skirmishes from criminal gangs pose a great challenge to the leadership of all the South states. Since security is a collective effort, even the citizens should play their roles. That's Law Alpha Cross.
Perhaps southern states or?
Well, he's not... he or she is not looking at Southwest alone now, the entire South, which is critical.
Okay.
Now,
South is a sub-region and so on, but hey, there you go.
We still have a Professor Enakina, and he says, so much security is mobilized for Ekiti elections. Why can't we use the same enthusiasm, resolution, and passion to militarize all parts of the country where mass murder, criminality, and terrorism abound? Government must show determination to end these insecurities. So, Chamberlain, you want to answer that question?
But I can only say that the police, they say that they don't share figures of their men deployed for duty. It's as good as revealing the strength. So they just decided to leave that, and that
so it's
it
a
was
new policy
intentional.
Because we've had it before, the figures,
in the
so
past.
perhaps a new policy then.
So they said it was intentional. That's coming from the police themselves, the spokesperson. And then, we understand that, we expect the president, there's going to be a Democracy Day parade at Eagle Square. They've been rehearsing this for a while now, yeah. So we're expecting the president to be there. And, of course, because, I remember attending this kind of parade at that time. It was always a very lovely and interesting thing. So any moment, who knows, the president will be there. Democracy Day parade, he will preside over that. So it should be a spectacle to behold.
Very colorful, Chamberlain. You say you recall
oh, yeah, you need to be there.
But that culture has waned. Sadly so.
I just hope so. And by the way, we didn't, I know, they're reminding us that the chief of staff to Governor Yaya Bello had his mother kidnapped since last year. No news of her release. And they also say, look, there's some kidnappers, or those who have been kidnapped, still in the hands of kidnappers in the States. Some residents can't go to their farms in Ibaji, Omala, Kaba, Ijumu. And so they thought that the security advisor to the governor should have spoken to some of those concerns. But there you go. That is the show today. We thank you all for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain.
I'm Kayode Okikele.
I'm Bukola Samuel Wemimo. Bye for now.